I did my first psychedelic, which was LSD, at 17, 18. And from that point, like my mind was just like, life is not the same like without this. I was doing it a lot. I was overdoing it, right?
Bounce back, ain't got a moment. When they see you down, just know they love it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bounce Back Podcast. I'm your host, B. Luke. I got a special guest with me today. So why don't you tell the people your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Zazu Noir. I'm from Dorchester originally. I'm really into music. Music and like community, that's my biggest thing.
So talk about the music. When did that start for you? At an early age?
I've always been musically inclined, more with like patterns and cadences. Coming up, I remember I started off with doing mostly poetry, right? So it's just mostly like figuring a way to get, the words on the paper and, have it hit, have that feeling actually like, return to you. But it's like that in itself, it was like doing math to me. I always fuck with science more than math, right? Because it was like easier for me. But music is like, or like the words themselves, it's like the math behind, you feel me, like language, the math behind the communication, right? So once you're able to like get that part of yourself on paper and communicate it, you feel me, to whoever, right? Even if you're not expecting anybody to hear it, then it's kind of like mastering a key, like learning, you feel me, the ability to learn through your own experiences. But from that point, I went on to start recording my own music in high school. And then I gained a little bit of popularity in senior year. From there, I kind of like hunkered down and started pushing.
Okay, so talk about like the thought process, what goes behind you writing that first poem, right? Like, was it just a school project and that you fell in love with it? What goes into that decision to write that?
It was more so just noticing, like I said, the math, right? I was always somebody who wasn't the best at communicating, right? The only reason like I find myself being able to be in spaces like this talking to you right now is because of poetry, right? So like it got to a point where like, especially growing up in like a troubled community or whatever the case may be, like that was one thing that immediately caught my attention when it came to hearing different speakers or seeing it online or whatever the case may be, right? So making those connections, I automatically was like, okay, I'm gonna give this a try, right? And then it just clicked. You feel me?
And so how old are you when you first start writing poetry?
So when I first started writing poetry, I was about 14.
Okay.
13, 14. Yeah, so that was like going into high school.
Okay, so were you a reader of poetry? Were you a fan of anybody at the time, or was it mainly like the music? What were the influences?
I guess it did start through music in a way. Just hearing the music and just like, putting the connections together with the words and stuff. But then there being a lot more opportunities presented through poetry in school, taking those opportunities as well. Extracurricular activities, right? I was either, playing ball, right? But when I was playing ball, it was just like with a bunch of people who at the time were not the best, for me, or just enjoy like the relationships just weren't it, right? So I just turned to poetry. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna rewind it a little bit, right? You said you grew up in Dorchester, and then you started moving around.
Yeah.
So I guess talk about those early years, what that was like growing up in Dorchester.
Growing up in Dorchester, so I grew up on Magnolia Street. It's like right around the corner from Upham's Corner. That was a little weird because we lived in this like big ass Section 8 apartment building. And there was like the backyard was the park, the neighborhood park, I guess, right? So everything that would happen, everything that went down happened there, right?
Good and bad?
Yeah, yeah. And the good was just like we were kids, so the good was just like being able to chill and bullshit, mess around, whatever the case may be. But then the bad is like a bunch of shit, like people getting jumped, like people getting stabbed because it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
You feel me? It really didn't make sense. And those those specific reasons attributed to one of the reasons or were big reasons as to why my mother had us move to Roxbury.
And how old were you when you moved?
12, I think.
Okay.
12, because we didn't stay in Roxbury for long. So
So you were pretty young seeing the things you were seeing,
Yeah.
being exposed to on Magnolia, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, was there ever a point, like being so young, did you feel scared? Maybe at night?
Yeah, but it was a thing where it was like, this is like where we're growing up, right?
Right.
So I like my experiences are just what they are in the moment, right? I don't really realize how it affects me until after.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So like it did lead me to a point where I was like, certain situations led me to a point where I was like shaken up a little bit, but it's like I still want to go outside, I still want to, you know, chill, I still want to go hang with my friends and stuff. So
Absolutely. So you said we, right? Talking about the household, you and your mom. Was that it? Did you have any other siblings? Or what's going on there?
yeah, so my little sister, she was born when I was 8, so she came in a little bit on the latter side of us staying at Magnolia. Her experience, thank God, it wasn't like she doesn't remember any.
Yeah.
You feel me? The stuff that happened like around that time, and that's something that I'm really glad about. I'm really thankful about, because I really wouldn't want her to have any sort of like, you know, mental navigation that I had to, you know, take on.
Talk about why. Why wouldn't you want her to have to go through those type of mental navigation, that type of mental navigation?
A couple of things, right? I feel like us, just as people, like our loved ones, we never want our loved ones to, you know, go through or see the same things that we had to see, right? If you didn't have to do it, or if you weren't, you know, you didn't have to be around that type of stuff, then I pray you never do. There's that, and then there's also the fact that, like, I'm a dude, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's a young woman, right? There's a lot more that comes with her experience of traumas and her experience of, you know, potentially scary situations that I really wouldn't even want around her. You feel me? So, yeah, that's
So it's you, your little sister, and your parents?
just my mother.
Just your mother? Okay. What's going on with your father at the time? I mean, you guys have the same father?
No.
Okay.
So, my father, like her father was around, but my father, early in life, I was visiting him sometimes. Like I would go, he lived in Roxbury, but I would visit him sometimes. But I don't know what happened. I don't know if there's a falling out. I know my stuff would go missing sometimes, but like, I don't know. I learned a lot more about my father's side of the family later in my life, like last year.
So when you say your stuff would go missing, what, when like your father was around, like taking your stuff?
Yeah.
Was it you know, was it a drug issue or?
I don't know, cause I know one vivid memories that I do have about my father is that he would drink and smoke a lot, and I remember like when I was young, like in my mind, like okay, like drinking, smoking, no, cause my mother wasn't. She would smoke cigarettes, but that's about it. But like seeing my dad do it at the same time, it was like, yeah, something's off, right? So yeah, I don't know anything. I don't know much beyond that. I'm not even gonna lie and pretend like I have like super fond memories of my father. You feel me? I will say that like through the course of life, I realized that it's not always one-sided, right? So I there's no resentment in my heart towards him, but yeah, that's just what it was.
Yeah, there's usually a million different things going on, and it's not usually like, oh, my dad's not around because he doesn't love me. There's many things that go into that, but as kids, we kind of might think a little differently. But you said your sister's father was around. Is that somebody who lived with you? Did he play like a stepfather role, or talk about that relationship?
He lived with us for a bit. I mean, he didn't really play the stepfather role for me.
Okay.
At all. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, what kind of man was he? Was he someone, at least, did he go to work? Did he have a job? Was he someone you would want to try to emulate? Maybe not the best father to you not being his kid, but
He always took care of my little sister.
did he take care of your mother?
I don't know. That's not
Well,
something I
okay,
can
so
say.
looking back, I mean, there wasn't nothing. He was, if anything, it wasn't in front of you or nothing.
Yeah,
that you
not
would
in front of
see.
me, because
Okay.
I know this stuff. I know there's a lot of stuff that they try to keep away from me. You feel me?
Yeah.
So,
Yep. That's what happened. So, you make this move from Dorchester to Roxbury. You're changing schools and everything like that. Like, what's going through your mind? Are you resentful towards this? Do you feel like you're leaving your friends behind?
not really. So the connections that I had with my friends, I still felt kind of alone, right? Like I said, just because of everything that would like happen, there's specific situations, but you know, even though like I like to chill with people, I like to be around people, it was still a thing where like I felt isolated in my own. So moving, it didn't really change much for me. right? Because I felt like all I had was my mother and my sister to begin with, right? So yeah, I stayed at the same school. I was going to Josiah Quincy, or actually before that, Orchard Gardens.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I ended up going to Josiah Quincy after Chinatown. That was weird because everybody was of a different race, right?
Yeah, I think I actually had someone else who went there. He said he was like the only black dude. It was all mainly Chinese students, right?
Yeah. And it's like, and it's actually crazy to hear that because that's quite literally the
Yep,
experience.
I'm sure it's probably not too often. I don't know what would make that move happen. Why would you go from this school to that school? Seems like not saying it's a bad school, probably a great school. It seems like an odd choice.
I guess it was more so just always trying to bridge the gap for my mother, because there was this thing called the Stanford 9. So once you get to a certain grade when like you're young, like they make you take the standardized test. If you get really high, you can get placed in advanced placement classes. And I got a really high score. So they didn't have advanced placement classes in Orchard Gardens. So they ended up moving me over to Josiah Quincy. And behaviorally and just everything, it just didn't work out. You know, like I stayed there throughout middle school, but the whole thing was just first year in advanced placement classes and behaviorally, because everything that was going on, I had to get kicked out of it, but then I was back in it, but then I got kicked out of it again. So
like what's happening behaviorally where you're getting kicked out? I mean, you throwing chairs, desks, you just mouthing off, you getting into fights, what's going on?
Man, I'll tell you, it was...
Oh, sorry.
No worries. It was just people constantly poking, and like when you're different, there's already the clear thing of like, okay, you're black. The
visual,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Right. But it wasn't even just that. Like I remember like doing really good on essays, like personal essays, and there was one I did about like being bipolar, right? And that played a big part of it too, right? But it's like I know that I get mad easily or got mad easily, right? I'm putting all this effort into doing this writing. So when I go and I present this to the class and my teacher was like, oh, it's really good. Then I leave the class and I got people like bipolar. Oh, da-da-da, like you're black. You can't be a polar, but it's like stupid.
Yeah.
It's like weird. It's like, bro, like, and the thing is too, like I don't have a tendency to be violent, right? That's one thing, right? I will get mad, right? But I don't get to the point where like unless you really harm me or somebody that I really care about, I don't really care. As long as I get my point across or I'm understood, that's all I really give a fuck about, right? People pushing me and doing all this extra shit, and all I feel like I can do is punch a locker. Then I'm punching lockers, and then I'm getting in trouble for punching lockers. Right. So it's like, bro, this is not.
It's like better the locker than someone else's face.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I see what's wrong with that, like logic, like now. You feel me? Years later, but
Absolutely.
It's like, as a kid, just being in that space where you felt like you were so different and you were so provoked that you couldn't do anything, right? Everything was wrong. Nothing was enough, right? It was just too confusing for me to maintain.
So in what ways would you lash out with your anger? Anger, is it yelling or like how would you kind of stop yourself in moments if you ever did? How would you cope with the anger that you were feeling at that time?
When I was younger, I remember a lot of it was just was yelling, but it was yelling, and it was the feeling of like being on fire. Like it felt like my body was just like I couldn't breathe, like I couldn't unclench my hands, whatever the case may be.
Right.
So as soon as anything like caused a reaction, like I would just go with the reaction, right? Like I'm a slave to the vibration at that point, the negative vibration at that point, and it just wasn't good.
So you had mentioned a bipolar diagnosis. I guess talk a little bit about that. When does that become part of the story? Why? Like, how do you figure this out? Were you acting up to get tested? Like, what happened?
So it's actually, like specifically that, and in Josiah Quincy, all this occurring, like it got me, like they checked me out, and I remember there was one really bad scenario where I'd gotten into something with the teacher, And I don't remember what they had ended up saying to me, but it was super disrespectful, right? I remember just yelling and yelling and yelling, and they tried to sit me down, and I was like, no, like you're gonna hear me, like some, you feel me? And then it just got to the point where like I was like, if nothing's gonna happen, I'm leaving, right? I don't know what the fuck is going on in my head. I can't get home. I can't walk home, right? I just got to get out of here, right? So I remember going, and then like having to be restrained and whatever the case may be, and like he was like, I don't know. It was just bad. Cause I remember after that, like there was this big ass teacher, like Mr. Rivera, whatever, who was sitting on me. It was just a bunch of stupid shit, right?
Wow.
Like I woke up in like a nurse's bed or whatever, not in the school, but at a hospital, right? And they were telling me, like, or they were like trying to play checkers with me or whatever the case may be. And my mother, I remember her coming in, her sitting there, and like just being so confused. And like I didn't realize like why until after, right? Because I got told about the bipolar diagnosis. I didn't understand it at first, but and then after that, right? Me realizing that a big part of this was that I had male family members with the same diagnosis, right? So in her mind, she didn't want to see me as a reflection of my father, right? It's like that's not what that is at all, you know?
Right. So what is that something, do they put you on medication? How do they address that?
So bipolar is something that is treated with lifelong medication. Unfortunately, one huge thing about it is a lot of people don't know themselves enough, right? So when they get diagnosed with bipolar, a lot of the times they have other shit that they gotta handle, work, school, family, whatever, right? It takes such mental unraveling to be able to get to a point where you even feel comfortable like just sleeping or like sitting there in silence like with yourself, right? And a lot of people they can't do that, so they just have to take the medication, right? It makes a lot of people feel like a zombie, right? It makes a lot of people feel like they can't emotionally attach to anything, whatever the case may be. It sucks, but sometimes it's necessary.
Was there at any point where you started to maybe revert to drugs and alcohol, right? Even if it's just weed, right? We'll call it a drug or whatever. Like, at what point do you try to ever turn to that?
So I did, but thank God, it was more so psychedelics.
Yeah.
Right. So I started by smoking weed, whatever the case may be, but then my big thing was
before you go on, at like what I'm just always curious to know, like at what age did you start the smoking weed?
I started smoking weed at 16, 17.
Okay.
It was like a little bit later.
Yep.
When I smoked my first cigarette at like 12.
Yep.
Like, it was weird, but like, yeah, I started smoking weed at like 16, 17. I did my first psychedelic, which was LSD, at 17, 18. And from that point, like my mind was just like, life is not the same like without this. I was doing it a lot. I was overdoing it, right? And thank God it wasn't one of those things where like, you feel me?
So are you in high school by this time? Are you in school while you're starting to get on the psychedelics?
Yeah, so like the end of high school.
Okay. So what high school are you going to at this point? Is that the same place?
So Everett High.
Okay, so now you're in Everett.
Everett, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Do you end up graduating from, what was it, Josiah?
Josiah Quincy.
Do you graduate, that's like grade school to 8th grade?
Oh, yeah.
Graduate from there, or do you get kicked out again?
I ended up moving to Everett. I had to spend the last, like 8th grade at Cavarian.
Okay, so talk about why the move to Everett. I mean, is it the same idea? Because Roxbury has tough neighborhoods too.
Yeah,
right?
So not only was that with the Roxbury, but it's like this place, 50 Blue Hill Ave. Like you probably like search it up, right? It's above, it's like sitting above a barbershop or something, or like a store or something. That whole thing, when we moved in, the windows were rickety. It was going into winter. It was super cold. We had barely any furniture from the move. Not only that, we had found out like 4 months after that there was mold growing in the walls. Like it was super dangerous.
So you guys
mold.
were ready to get out of there almost as soon as you got in there, kind of? She just looking for a spot while she was there.
Yeah, so we had to go family first, and we had to, from there we like stayed at this hotel in Charlestown. And yeah, from there then we ended up moving to Everett.
So do you start forming like relationships in that area too? You can start Getting any friends outside of school, maybe, you know what I mean, in Roxbury, around the way?
I don't think I was there long enough.
So how long was the total stay?
A couple months to a
Oh,
year.
okay. Yeah, not very long at all. And then, so you finished the year at, and what was that, a school in Everett?
Yeah, Cavarian.
Cavarian, okay. So talk about that experience. I mean, you've moved around a couple times, right? I mean, a couple different schools. You go from a school in Dorchester originally to now you're in Chinatown. Now you're in Everett. What's this transition like?
So it was a lot, right? The thing with the transition to Everett was I finally got a chance to start fresh, right? And it was a mix of people.
Yeah.
So I wasn't just like left alone with nothing really to understand. You know, by that point, my social tendencies were already not the best, right? Just because of my interactions through life up to that point. So it was like a thing where my mindset automatically switched to being super open, right? And I was trying to be super giving, right? I was trying to be super like engaging, right? And I found a part of myself there, right? It started to like a seed, right? But it didn't work out because once I started going out after school and stuff like that and going to chill with certain people, like I would get taken advantage of sometimes. And it's kind of like a naivete. But then like even like in going through Everett High, like coming out and going, it would still happen because I'm still loving. I'm not gonna let that change me, but I'm just more and more aware of how shit is going on, how shit is changing.
So once things like that happened, I mean, was there any sort of that anger management thing going on, or any sort of confrontations that you would have to deal with when people would kind of take advantage of, mistake kindness for weakness or whatever the case may be?
100%. So luckily though, a lot of the times I didn't have to approach it myself. Sometimes I definitely did, but there were points because there was this park called Alpine, right? And basically all of the neighborhood like delinquents, would go chill there, right? And it was a thing where like we would all chill, talk about the bullshit of the day, whatever the case may be, and it felt kind of like a small family, but it was so trauma based.
Right.
It was
trauma
so
bonding.
Yeah. So like whenever situations would occur, people would automatically switch sides. I mean, I'd like switch sides and pick sides.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
Yeah. So that's what I mean when like luckily a lot of times people would just be like, yeah, that don't worry about that person. Like don't you feel me?
Yeah.
Like just guide me away from it, stare me, okay, this and that, da. But then relationships start weeding themselves out. And,
I feel like that's a natural progression of things sometimes at that age. I feel like when you're in high school, someone asks you how many friends you got, you might say 20, 50, whatever. You know what I mean? And then 6 years later, you're like, oh, well, you'd be lucky if you got enough to count on one hand, like real solid friends, Yeah. So now what happens? Now you're in Everett High. Are you getting behavioral issues? Are you detention, suspension? Does that carry over?
No,
or do
not
you
as
start
much,
to get that?
to be honest.
So why do you think that is? Do you think it's the environment, a different environment?
I think it was just more so the mindset of like, staying to myself. Like now I'm older, I can make the choice to be like, I can choose to who I give my energy to, whatever the case may be.
Yep.
So that did play a huge role.
Having the fresh start, knowing what you know. So did that trouble ever follow you outside of school? Did you ever start getting in trouble with the law?
Yeah. So unfortunately, like that's where a big part of the psychedelics and the drugs and stuff came in, because it wasn't just me taking psychedelics, right? So like I would take the psychedelics like with other people who weren't just taking psychedelics, right? It got to a point where like I started like learning and making connections to myself, and I was like, this is awesome, this is amazing. But then my friends would be like slouched over, you feel me? And it's just like,
out.
yeah. So like, but I didn't even like, it was weird because I didn't notice the connection, because I don't know, just the experience of like making those connections and growing outward from outward from the mind. Sometimes you're not able to have the perspective of like what's super close in proximity. So it's like I wasn't really seeing how it was affecting the other people around me. And I guess it was kind of in a way selfish, right? Because it was like, okay, this isn't I'm not seeing this affect me in a negative way. So me being in this scenario with other people, no matter what they're actually doing, right? This is just something that can continue to happen.
So that eventually leads up to what happened in like how did you get in trouble with the law? What happens with that?
So
what's like your mom's reaction?
So my mother doesn't know anything.
Okay.
My mother doesn't like, and that's like when I started going to Kavarian, I made it a huge thing to keep everything that I had on like the outside away from my mother.
Compartmentalize everything.
Yeah, just because like I said, there was a point like where I didn't want my mother to see me in a certain light, especially as being a part, like a male in the family.
Okay, so what's part of that mindset? Is it like, are you afraid of her, or is it you don't want to let her down? Are you afraid of what's going to come if she sees you in a certain light?
It's just like, yeah. So it's just like she was all I really like have like that.
Yeah.
Like she was the only person that has any reason to love me unconditionally.
So like break your heart, if to break her heart,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she never finds out about any of this. You just have to. Are you an adult when you get arrested?
So she doesn't find out about it because at the time I was homeless. Prior, me and her had just gotten into like arguments or whatever the case may be, stemming from the fact that she felt like I wasn't super attentive or I wasn't as submissive as I should have been as a son, right? Which there are certain times I can't even disagree with it, right? You know, but there's certain times where it's just like it just went overboard to the fact that we just couldn't be in the same place.
Is this while you're still going to school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the last 2 years I was in school actually was going to Everett High. I was homeless for a couple months and then I had went back and then I was homeless for another 2 years after that. So when I had graduated, I was homeless.
So talk about that experience. I guess being homeless for a couple years. Like what's like the after school, what's the day-to-day thing? Like what do you do with your day? Where do you get the shower? Where do you actually stay? Just couch surfing, or do you have to have a tent somewhere?
Yeah, no. So my boys, thank God, I had two really good friends. Well, one, my boy Thomas, right? He always made sure to look out. He always made sure, like, he always welcomed me, right? There were falling outs that we had, which we're way past now. But like I'll really always appreciate everything that he's done with me. Done for me.
No, is that something where like he was with his parents too? Did they?
Yeah.
Okay,
So his parents, they were actually living downstairs. I think his grandmother owned the whole complex.
Gotcha.
And then he had the upstairs.
So I guess what eventually you said you kept that kind of your mom sheltered from when things happened. What are the events that lead up to the law getting involved?
Yeah. Okay. So like it was just basically things where like we would be like Glendale, right? So this is part.
I know Glendale. Yeah, I lived in Everett for a little bit.
Those two spots. One, the police station is right across from Glendale.
Yep.
So it would always be points like there was one night I was arrested, but I wasn't like held, thank God. But I was just high off my ass. I was
At Glendale Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like because we would be tripping.
Is this
like nuts?
pre the high school being there, or is this after?
No, this is after the high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a little older. That's why.
No worries. No worries.
All right.
But thank God I didn't have to, face like crazy time for it. Cause, I did a little bit of like I had to trap here and there just to get by. You feel me? I was never like, super like, I'm gonna. You feel me?
Yeah,
like
you're gonna blow up off of this.
Yeah.
And just trying to get your little fix for free, with a couple dollars to scrape by for whatever.
Exactly. And it got to a point where it was working well actually. Like it got to a point where I got a little bit farther than I'd expected. And then, it transitioned into like a little bit like harder stuff. But, thank God, like I stopped fucking with that before, anything more came of it. Like other extra shit came out of it. So
what do? You do get a charge though? Is it a possession charge?
No.
So you never even.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. So I would, like I said, like I was just arrested, but I wasn't held.
Okay.
So yeah.
So when do you get real serious with the music and actually starting to like record and stuff like that?
Okay, so when I actually started recording was when I was still in high school. Because I had like a little laptop and I had an Audio Technica mic. I would come bullshit, listen to beats. All right, this is fire, da da da. Then I would just throw it up on Facebook and SoundCloud, right? But when I started doing the psychedelics, man, I'll tell you that was like a thing where it was like something needs to change, right? Things need to change. Like it just started making extra ass connections. So it was like, you know, I'm actually gonna start pushing this. And there was another artist in the scene, Art Zeus, right? He was doing a lot of stuff with the community and bringing a lot of other artists together, and he was really crafting a scene. He's really underrespected right now, so I really want to like give a huge shout out to him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then my best boy, you might know him, Something New. He insane. Like he's the one who actually got me like into pushing everything super hard as well, because there was this collective called Century 22, and there was like a couple producers, and he brought me over. We would record. We started doing shows and stuff together. I guess Century 22, everybody's kind of started doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, what was your favorite part about, you know, about doing the music?
My favorite part was just like the art, I guess. You feel me? Just really getting that out. It felt like something that I was naturally good at. You feel me? It felt like something I could do without effort, that I could genuinely be acknowledged for. And even if I wasn't acknowledged for it, I knew how good I was.
Right. So what's your process? Like, do you write, or do you freestyle? You punch in, punch it. But what's like your process of making music?
So mostly 9 times out of 10, just because the artist I am, I write. So I'll start with some sort of conceptual basis, whether it be like a couple lines, or whether it be like something, you know, something just comes to my head and I'm like, okay, I could, you know, make this into a hook and then make the song around that. But, you know, sometimes I like actually living in, you know, the artist's mindset of just being able to, on the spot, like, punch in, but freestyling, I was always freestyling. So, yeah.
How bad does it get with the psychedelics? And then when do you eventually kind of put that, at least, maybe not quit forever, but at least not where you're going so crazy with it?
I'll tell you, psychedelics, it did 2 things. It gave me the craziest resilience ever. But it also destroyed my concept of what, you know, connections were, like with people.
Social.
Yeah, social connections. It got to a point where I was doing it every day. Like, yeah. And it was like LSD and shrooms, but like I was more so on the LSD because the LSD was like, it feels like you're in a whole different world. Like your mind is like just running. Since I loved to learn, you feel me? Like I loved, and it's the real stuff, like the spiritual stuff, you feel me? Like making godly connections, divine connections. Like, man, that was my shit, right? But then, you know, it got to a point where it's just like, 1, it feels like my body was getting weaker. You know, 2, I found myself in situations like I woke up one night, and I remember woke up one night. I got to my ex's house one night, and she was sleeping, and I just remember like I lied on the floor and I was like laying down. She was my girlfriend at the time. Right. I don't want to.
Yeah. Now, I got you.
But I was sleeping on the floor, and like I laid on the floor. It was just like I closed my eyes, and all I remember is just, I can't even describe the feeling. It was just like red and black, like, and it was like kind of like a chained wall. Like I can't even describe the visuals I was having, but it was just a feeling of like trappedness, right? And it was a feeling of deterioration, right? It literally felt like everything was flaking, and it felt like I didn't care. And that was the thing in my head. It was like none of this can actually hurt me. None of this is actually hurting me, whatever the case may be. And I woke up that next morning, and I went to a friend's house, and I felt so calm, right? Had a super good conversation, and I was just thinking. My mind was so steady that morning, and I was like, yeah, I think that was it. I was like, I think there's nothing past that. Yeah. Right? Like, I had the mindset that I can't have a bad trip. There's no such thing as a bad trip. Like, I was like, that's the closest I'm gonna get while still getting anything out of it, right?
And since then, you've stopped completely, or
every once in a while I've visited shrooms. Acid I've probably done like twice since then. And like half tabs or whatever the case may be.
So what about drinking and weed? Is that something that you do now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Drinking, I don't do as much. I never really latched on to drinking, but I was drinking often, but I never really was a thing where it was like a problem for me, like a super problem. Smoking, it definitely is. I feel like culturally it's a problem. I definitely
Right.
feel like culturally it's a problem because there's a lot of cons that we choose to ignore, right? And I understand like the use of it. I still definitely do it way more than I should, right? But weed is definitely one of those things where all too often, oh, it isn't a drug. I can just smoke freaking this ounce in 2 days and
I mean, it's
everything is
definitely
good.
a mind-altering substance, right?
Yeah.
And if that's how you would define a drug, right? I mean, it's definitely mind-altering, just like alcohol. Like, in what ways has it become a problem for you? Is it like financially? I mean, nowadays it could be inexpensive. I mean,
Yeah, I think that was the biggest thing. So even when I was trapping, like when I started with trapping bud, like a big part of it was just being able to smoke for free. Like that
Yeah.
was a good part of it. So anything that came after was just like, all right, I'm cool.
Right.
But that just led into an even deeper, weirder lifestyle. So
Right.
you feel me?
Did you ever hit like a rock bottom, or what you would consider a rock bottom, a low point, where you feel like you would have to bounce back from?
In terms of weed or
I guess more so with the psychedelics.
Psychedelics?
Or we anything. I mean, you said alcohol wasn't really a problem.
a big thing was the mental health. So like that aspect of taking the psychedelics also helped too because I felt or it enabled more so I should say.
Do you think too with the whole bipolar diagnosis and
Yeah.
taking, I mean, or not taking medication? I don't know what you were doing, but I mean, mixing medication with stuff is usually not good. Not taking your medication
Yeah.
is usually not good.
Yeah.
Like, was that all part of it?
So I felt like it definitely was. I will say psychedelics in the long run, it did help when it came to the bipolar. Only because it allowed me that access mentally to be able to dissect certain traumas that aligned with it. You feel me? So even if I did have a chemical imbalance, it still wasn't carried by the weight of something that happened 7 years ago that I didn't get the chance to, unpack yet.
So talk about the mental health part, man. What are what was the worst place you were at with that?
I'd say the worst place I was at with mental health is not too long ago. It was just a thing where it was like I was in the music scene for so long. A big part of why I met so many people, made so many different connections, was the feeling of like, okay, wanting other people to feel accepted. I could always handle being rejected. Like I grew up with like that was the whole, you feel me? But it was a thing where it was like I felt like I was always so giving and so loving, and doors just started to close. And it's not doors and opportunities, but doors is in like home, right? And like you don't have access to your family, and like your friends are starting to turn against you because of like business stuff or like monetary stuff, whatever the case may be. And then you have stuff happening on the back end. Your relationship is just like just deteriorating, and like there's literally nowhere you can go, right? There's nothing you can do. It just gets to a point where sometimes you just combust,
Yeah.
right? You just break down, and sometimes people make decisions that they can't really return from,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately it led to that. And luckily I was able to recover, right?
Right.
Luckily I am in a space where I feel like there is nothing that can stop me but myself,
Yes.
right? And also remembering that it's like there is nobody to blame but myself, right? So coming out of the hospital and feeling like there's a bunch of backlash against you, people who don't know what you're going through, people who don't understand, and then people who have some details, they're like telling half things, so everybody's kind of like coming up with a conclusion that
Right.
yeah,
Filling in the pieces.
yeah, and like stuff like that, it really makes you feel like everything is against you, right? So you got people saying, oh, I love you, like da da da, like you could have came to me, you feel me, if you need whatever, da da da, and then the next week they're like, oh, you don't want him around, or we don't want to do with you, oh da da da, this and that, and it's like, damn, right? And then even that, like going through that, it's like, okay, I understand that not everybody may be able to comprehend or understand what's going on. I understand that, you know, people have other things that they have to, you know, return to, and they might not have the time to handle that with nuance, right? Where I fucked up is I started taking, you know, transactional relationships and processing them as personal connections, right? And that's something that I had to realize again, or remind myself, that not everybody has the capacity to accept you for everything you do, for everything you are. But if you feel like you doing that with other people is part of what makes you you, you can't let them take that away from you, right? You just have to grow and advance with that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who maybe feels, you know, like they don't want to live?
My biggest advice is fuck everybody else's point of view, fuck everybody else's perspective. The only person that needs to acknowledge you is yourself. The only person that ever needs to like acknowledge like your greatnesses is you. Like your potential is you, you know? A lot of times people feel like that because they feel like they don't have a place, right? Whether it's because other people made them feel like that, or it's because they tricked themselves mentally into, you know, into that corner. But realistically, as long as there is something that you feel connected to, it doesn't have to be a person, it doesn't have to be a place, it have to be a thing, it could be a belief, right? It could be whatever you feel like makes you you, right? That is your reason, right? There's always something more for you based off of that seed alone, right? So it's just like go through it and stick with that.
Did you ever look to a higher power, be it God or whatever, and maybe ask, you know, why these things are happening to me, or ask for help or anything like that, or build a relationship with a higher power?
Yeah, my mother's side of the family, so like my grandmother and my grandfather, they would really always go to church. Like they were the people to always get me like into that mindset. But the thing is, like personally growing up with the whole spirituality thing, I didn't necessarily align with every single, you know, belief in those contexts.
Absolutely.
So I guess I found a way to fuse my own, or like took what makes sense to me, you feel me? And use that. Because if it makes sense to me and I can apply it to situations, and these situations like return that to me, that like, okay, this is what, like you did the right thing, right? This is how it's supposed to go. That's like, all right, you know, that's real enough, right?
So talk about the music and the connection with mental health. Can it help, or you know, even just listening, writing, talk about like what kind of connection that's, or how it may have helped your mental health throughout I guess your whole life.
Like at first, like I said, just started with like communicating, right? It just started as a form of communicating to myself, letting that out, you know, getting that expression out. Then like as the spirituality became more prevalent, then I started realizing like thoughts, you know, every thought that we have, it comes from somewhere, right? Whether it be like past experiences or whatever the case may be, we take multiple things, put it together, and then we form this new idea, and then we place it down. Now that in itself is divinity, right? That in itself is God, right? So it's like once you start, you know, working with producers, you know, doing that, once you start like, this is real, like this is a spirit, right, that flows through all of us, right? And you know, things like music, things like, you know, even visual arts, right? That those connective pieces, right? Those are something that time cannot put a dent in. Time can't take that away, right? We look at TV, we look at the media, whatever the case may be. The story is going to change over time, right? But we look in caves, we look in, you know, pyramids, we look at whatever the case may be. We show this art. It's like, okay, even though we might not be able to understand it all the way, we can still get a sense of what they were trying to communicate. Right? That shit's 10,000, 100,000. You feel me?
And starting with the poetry, I take it, you know, the lyrics and everything like that. Are you more lean towards the words of the music as opposed to the rhythm and the beats, or how do you look at it like that? Or is it, obviously it's a culmination of both? I mean, do you lean one way towards the other, or what?
So I lean more with words, but just slightly more.
Okay.
Right. I lean like probably 60, 70%, right?
Okay.
And the reason I say that is it's not, it don't specifically got to be the most like eloquent shit, right? It just has to convey something at all, like in general, right?
Sort of message, right?
Yeah. You can't be saying nothing to say nothing, right? But a big way that touches people who can't see that is through the beat, through the vibration, right? So even like the samples that hip hop artists use, right? They could be talking about the craziest thing, but you'll hear like the little chords in the background, right? And like those little string plucks, right? You'll literally feel that stimulate your brain as you're listening to what they're saying, keeping you intrigued, keeping you interested, right? It's going through your body, and you feel me, making it so like even if you're not listening completely what they're saying, throw it on again. You're right. You might hear more. Throw it on again. Whatever the case may be.
Right, like the words could get the intellectual side, but and then the music, the rhythm, the beat will get the emotional side. It's all like they all converge into one, which I think makes music, beautiful. The tone. I mean, even Game of Thrones, like that's so dope to me, and I never even thought I would care to like anything like that, but I'm like, this music that they're playing is so it like fits, you know what I mean? It's almost medieval or whatever in a sense. And but like the power of words, man, I mean, how do you think that, because that seems like it could be a double-edged sword, right? A knife that cuts both ways. Bad words could have, bad, especially if you're internalizing them to yourself. But I mean, the power of positivity. I mean, if you just want to touch on that part of like words and everything.
Yeah. So it allows you, like, it definitely allows you a chance to see it. Like once you like record it, it allows you to see the evolution of like your thought pattern, right? So like even if you might not have the healthiest of thought patterns, you put that album out, then you're all of a sudden feeling like, oh, you're coming out of the you feel me, like the shadows or whatever the case may be. You feel like negativity is like starting to come off you, and you feel like you're in this starting a different part of life, right? So I do feel like that's where the words fall into place. Like me personally, I have 3 projects called To Whom It Should Not Concern, right?
Okay.
It's a 3-part, it's 3 EPs, and basically it just goes around the idea of one, as an artist, being able to convey without fear of judgment, right? Without feeling like anybody's gonna reject you, without caring like, okay, this is like, I'm gonna critique this to the craziest extent. Like, no, like just get it out, right?
Flow.
And then 2, it's literally to whom it should not concern, because it's none of your business, right? If you like it, you will like it, right? Like, I literally can't afford to be scared of what people think about the things that I say in my music, right? Because if I do that, then it holds me back from actually being like authentic in situations, right? So if I rap about feeling like I was betrayed, if I rap about, you feel me, like not aligning with certain things or certain beliefs or whatever the case may be, it's like, if it's the truth, right? I don't have to worry about, okay, like this person's not gonna like it. They'd be like, oh, was this about, or was it whatever the case may be, this and that. Because freaking 99% of the people who actually listened to it actually fucked with it. You feel me? And it actually like progressed me somewhere. You feel me? Like, grow up. Those words will not hurt you.
Absolutely. So talk about like performing. Is that something that you've done? Is it something that you're looking forward to doing or have plans to do in the future?
Yeah. So I performed for a little bit, for a few years. I performed very frequently earlier this year, so probably like the first 6 months of the year or the first 5 months of this year, all of last year, and then all of the year before that. But those were just like kind of smaller gigs, more so like more intimate locations. Some opportunities were, a little bit more enticing, like got to perform at the Middle East a couple times, right? So that's been cool. Got a chance to perform at a couple festivals, right? The thing is, it's just like now I'm more so focused on turning that into something, right? So I feel like a lot of the times shows are polluted with people who might not necessarily care, right? And I feel like that's a big problem nowadays.
Okay, so
right?
Whereabouts are these people? Are we talking about the audience? Are we talking about people putting together, promoters? What do you mean by that?
Well, first and foremost, I think not all of it, but a big part of it falls on the promoters, right? Not to say that any specific promoter does any specific thing wrong, right? But just the idea of, like, if you're creating an infrastructure, you have to be prepared for the pros and the cons of that, right? And if your infrastructure is purpose or a model to give artists opportunities and allow engagement or boost interaction or even like boost the networking, right? Then there's methods that you should like put in to be able to have that happen, right? But a lot of the times it feels like they're so overwhelmed with, oh, I just got to get this done, this done, this done. Okay, this is my template. Okay, it usually works. We usually make this much off of it. Okay, break this off, da da da. It's like, okay, where do the opportunities come in? What is the growth for anybody come in? Right. The only thing that's growing is your pockets right now. Right. And it's nothing against it, right? You do your work, get your money hard. You feel me? Hard work.
But don't forget the passion part of it. Like, I feel like that even that, like doing construction nowadays, it's so much a business that they just slap buildings up, flip them, boom, on to the next one. Whereas like the Romans was trying to they're building something that still stands. They take pride in it. They want to build something that's going to be here forever. I feel like you could do that with music as well. But I feel like it's one of those things where it's a double-edged sword too. Obviously the money's great. You want to get paid to do something you love, but then when you start monetizing things, it just adds a different element to it. And then you start to see people might be a little not selfish, but more driven towards that instead of the art, right? You know 100%. What I mean? So what's been some difficulties that you've run into as far as music in general, right? Recording or what's some obstacles that you ran into?
First, performances, going in as an artist and expecting to perform, being told I was going to perform, and then not performing by the end of the night.
Wow.
So that's probably one of the craziest things that had happened to me and a couple other people.
Yeah. So how does it happen? Is it double booking, or does things start too late? They try to squeeze somebody out, misunderstanding.
It's carelessness. Yeah, it's overbooking. With a lack of respect for the artist's time.
Right. Well, you got to psych yourself up just to get ready to. I mean, it takes balls to even get on stage and perform. You know what I mean? So you just get psyching yourself to do that, and to be told that you can't. It's gotta suck. Do you remember your first time performing? Did you what came with that? Any butterflies, nervousness?
Yeah.
So talk about that experience.
For sure. So I think one of the first times that I remember performing was my boy Ark Zeus's like a Spirit Bomb festival, and that was dope. I was in a duo named Beantown Oddities with Something New. It was fire. I was super nervous, but I remember like there was a point where people were recording, and we were doing a song called Business, and while we were doing that song, I was sitting and like closing my eyes, and I saw a flash, right? And I'm starting to see like flashes, like my peripheral, whatever the case may be, is just a feeling like, I need this. Like I need this forever. Wow. Like, you feel me?
Do you feel like having somebody out there with you kind of helped with the nerves a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it always does. I've actually been performing with other people for years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So always part of like a group, a duo.
Yeah, I mean.
But at the same time doing solo.
Yeah.
Music?
So like when I was when I broke into performing on this specific scene, the specific current state of the music scene, I did it alone.
Okay.
So I was part of a collective, but I was the only one performing. And then that's when it got to the point where other people, like the promoter, thankful enough, Hero, he was like, okay, we're gonna we would love to have your peoples on a a collective show, and from there we just started knocking it out of the park. So what are some things you're working on now, like short-term goals, long-term goals, as far as music and life too? My biggest thing right now is probably just starting my own infrastructure. I feel like I've relied too much on other people's intentions throughout my career. It just got to a point where, like no negativity involved. Just like one can't have the expectation that people are going to share the same agenda, right? And especially when it comes to something like I want to be able to, I guess, show love or help people feel loved through my platform. Right, whether it be like helping certain people garner acknowledgement or connecting certain people to purposes that may be important to them, opening thresholds to allow people to connect with, you know, activism, or just something that calls to them, right?
Yeah.
So that gives them that drive or whatever the case may be. Like that's what I want to be able to do with my platform,
Yeah.
right?
Why is that important for you?
Because like growing up, like I said, like I felt like I was always alone.
Mm-hmm.
You feel me? Like even when I had friends, it felt like when I was showing love, the love was taken advantage of. But then there's like this always this switch back of like, okay, when I'm more so standoffish, when I'm more so, you feel me, to myself, whatever the case may be, you know, people like are now they have a reason to have a problem,
Right.
So like I like just being myself. I want to be able to love without having that door there, without having to expect it back, right? And if I can just build an infrastructure that is in itself based off of love, right, to the point where it's automatic and continuously flowing, then I don't have to worry about whether people are going to give that back to me or not, or whatever the case may be, because I know the people that is being put into are going to push the love as well, and you feel me, and spread that as well. And you know that's how we really change shit.
Never change who you are, man. You gotta be happy with being yourself and letting the chips fall where they may and adjust it. Because I've been like that too, man. Where I feel like, oh man, forget it, man. I'm just gonna be this stone cold asshole dude, and that's more work than just being, you know what I mean, than being myself and letting, you know, the people weed themselves out if they're, you know, if they're not in your life, if they, you know, are only around for transactional reasons and things like that. You know, the people who are supposed to be in your life will be in your life, and the people who are not, they won't. And some people, it's not meant to be forever. Some people are meant to be in your life, but maybe only for a short period of time.
Exactly.
But I would say don't ever change. You know, don't ever not be yourself because of how others react to it, man. And sometimes we forget that because we care so much about what others may think.
And that's the biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it hurts in the moment sometimes, right? Like feeling like you can't really do anything outside of it. But at the end of the day, that's what's gonna lead us to Rome. That's what's gonna lead us, you feel me, to that light. So
well, I'm glad you touched on like the mental health part of things too, man. It's something it's a tough topic for a lot of people, and it's not spoken about enough. So I just want to ask, like, why was that? You know, why do you think people should? I mean, or do you think people should speak more about mental health? Why and why not?
I think people definitely should speak more on mental health. I think the reason that it's not talked about enough is because of, you know, a structure that's already in place societally, to where, you know, things have to keep moving, and, you know, being able to talk about unraveling, you know, the things that we might not understand about ourselves yet, that takes way too much time out of people's days to, you know, to not only give to somebody else, right, but sometimes even pull out of themselves.
Right.
So
yeah, there's a stigma involved with it too, and it's like you can't spend too much time on the past and forget about the present as well, man. So like, you got have you recorded any music videos or anything like that?
So I have something coming up. It's called Endless. It's not specifically me, but it's a group that I worked with since, you know, I came in. They're, you know, super dope. They're always really hardworking. They're Zen Studios. So we have a song called Endless. And that's gonna be coming out pretty soon. I don't have a date for it yet.
Okay.
But that music video is gonna be pretty insane.
Okay. Is that gonna be your first one? Have you shot music videos before?
Yeah, so I had a couple music videos, but it just got to a point where the quality wasn't enough to my, you know, liking, like, which is weird. But like visually, I just want to make sure like things are super pristine, especially like with like I take the chance sometimes, like sonically, right? So if I'm taking the chance sometimes sonically, then I want to make sure like visually people are able to, you know, have clean enough visuals and quality enough visuals to, you know, connect that.
I mean, how
concept.
important is it to make that visual connection? Because even like on YouTube, you'll see you'll see an audio version of a song, and then you'll see the official video, and they're the same song, but this is the official video, millions more views, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think that is? Why is it important for the visuals?
Because I feel like our brains, some people handle things better sonically, but just in general, a package of both sonics and visuals, like that's all encapsulating. It's the same reason why like people pay however much to go see Drake in concert or go see Kanye, right? Because they know the production behind, you know, everything that's gonna go on, right? It's literally putting them in a whole nother world, a whole nother experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Controlling their space and their time at the same time.
Absolutely.
So all they have to perceive is that video.
Right, and they say a certain amount of communication is actually non-verbal. So if it's non-verbal, you got to at least see it, right? You
Exactly.
know what I mean? And it's you can see the emotions on somebody's face, and then or the cool lighting for the, depending on the song. Obviously, who would you say are some of your like musical influences?
Mick Jenkins, first of all, crazy. West Side Boogie, JID, Kendrick. Yeah.
Okay, if you were to, I guess, explain your style as like a hybrid of a couple or a few different artists, right? I'm a little bit of Cole mixed with X. Like, how would you explain that?
You said X. I don't know how I forgot
Oh,
X.
DMX. Oh, I love DMX.
X
Rest
is
in peace. Yeah.
generational.
Yeah.
X is generational.
I mean, he's the reason I probably fell in love with like hip hop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, whoa, this dude's so relatable. Oh, but yeah.
Yeah, he changed the game for the artists.
Yeah.
He was like the art. He's like what Kobe was to basketball players. That's what X was to us.
Yeah.
You feel me?
So how would you explain, like, if someone to ask you like what your style is like?
So I'd say I probably at times the artistic range of X, because I don't like to always be linear with what I put out. Definitely the tone or the tonality of Mick Jenkins, because when I rap, my voice is a little bit more monotonous. You feel me? And I'm more so focused on connecting like words in the wordplay of things. And then Boogie with the poeticism of it all. So Westside Boogie, the way he constructs lines, they're like simplistic punches, but they're simplistic and they're relatable to the point where like nobody can miss it at all. You feel me?
So you do a lot with other artists, right? The teamwork part, like what? Why? Like, what's the benefits of that? And expound upon that.
Like one big part of it is like, it's kind of a double-sided thing, right? So one, the good part is seeing the potential in other people and wanting to help them live it out.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, to me, I see a class, right? I don't see like me and this person who lives over here and this person. No, like we're all one class, right? Like just like the double XO, you got the freshmen or whatever the case may be. Yeah. It's like we're all making it out together, And it's like I don't want anybody in that class to be left behind at all, right? Especially if you deserve it. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably funner too, right? I would imagine, especially if it's friends and stuff like that,
Yeah.
So what about features? Is there, if I guess dead or alive, if there was one person that you could do a feature with, just snap of your finger, do you have anybody in mind?
Probably Mick Jenkins. Yeah.
Mick Jenkins. That's fire. Why?
Because like he's the person who ties it all together. You feel me? He has a little bit of everything to me, right? So like everybody has their different definition of what a perfect artist is, right? To me, like Mick Jenkins is like the perfect artist, right? And he also does very well, like personality-wise, with staying outside of the media, while still maintaining, touching his fan base. So, yeah.
Why did you want to come up here and tell your story today? Why did you think that it's important? Because hearing the music's one thing, but seeing the personal side of people is always good, and hearing the story. But
a couple of things. One, I feel like putting music out for so long, like I want people to understand where it comes from. I feel like I've been around so many people that have heard the music, and even if they're like, oh, I fucked with it, or like whatever the case may be, like they still don't understand the full aspect of like where it's coming from, right? And then on top of that, I also wanted to be able to, motivate people, or just like give that one thing, at least that one thing that people need to hear, that like lifts their heart just a little bit, like we're all like we've all been scrolling like one day, and then we've come across a video, and then we like might have went to skip it, where you're like, hold on, let me just check this out, and then they say something, and it's like, damn, I'm really glad I watched that video, right? And you scroll, your day's just a little bit better, your mind's a little bit lighter, like even if it doesn't fix things, healing is not linear, and it's up to that person on their own, but I just want, you feel me, them to get something out of this.
Tell them where they can find you, whether TikTok, wherever, YouTube, SoundCloud even.
You can find me at the real Zazu Noir on Instagram. You can find me at Zazu Noir on Facebook. That's mostly all I'm on. So yeah.
Okay. If there was anything that you want to touch upon that we didn't have a chance to talk about today, or some closing words?
No, I just want everybody to be able to live their life without fear. Like, you're a part of your environment for a reason, right? You would not be there. You would not still be there if you feel me. You weren't able to. You feel me? Like, all it takes sometimes is taking a step back, resetting and reminding yourself what you're doing it for, not what these other people want you to do it for, not what these other people are making you like go against. What, like, no, bro, right? You're here because you want to be here. There's something that you feel like you want to achieve, right? And just focus on that. Okay,
why should people listen to your music? What about your music is gonna stand out to them?
I got something for everybody, and I don't bullshit. Like you can listen to every single line. You can dissect what I'm saying. You can either relate to it, or you be like, damn, like this is really telling, right? Of either the state of the world, or the state of just consciousness, like society. You feel me? How people perceive things, right? So I always want people to have that perspective.
Could we get an acapella for the camera?
Yeah, ready for takeoff. Phone still buzzing, there's trouble ringing. Where to turn? When the Jakes in the industry double teaming. Niggas mad, can't let them leverage a soul that ain't up for lease. What's the cost of belief? Pain in the process of every sequence. The code, a sharp aroma all cut and chroma muck. Your nose and will sniff for the dope or snap on about that comatose. Careful who you serve. Snakes and rodents moving coast to coast. Patience was running low, so I kept the charge in the overcoat. Yeah, used to be on Maverick looking for a back and running acid tabs in every porcelain Adidas fashion. Yeah, looking for a bag, I had to feed the passion. Started jotting captions, now a nigga feeling everlasting. Yeah, too many minds being hypnotized, digitized, vibe energized. We have a different tribe. Went from splitting honey buns to splitting cakes and bodies. Wake up after psilocybin bender, seeing 999.
Hey, yeah. Tell the people one more time who you are.
Zazu Noir, you feel me?
I'm B. Luke, guys. It is what it is. The Bounce Back Podcast. Remember what's next. That's what you make it. On that note, thanks for coming through.
Thank you, man.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Peace.
Bounce back, you got a moment when they see you down this